process we went through, also to generate some ideas to help enhance the whole initiative for all those involved. So this is very much, this is an experiment, I think, really. We mentioned at the start of this experiment, and so we're learning as we go along and feeding back and want to get some input from other stakeholders who might be interested in all this. So I'm Simon Elias, probably know most of you, and we've got Mark Boswell as our guest presenter, who will introduce himself shortly. He's the teacher of science at Amersham School. We've allowed 90 minutes for this maximum. It might be less, depending on how we get on. Just for administrative purposes, we've got the chat facility in Zoom, which you can comment or ask a question or post things for addressing later. Also, we're recording this so we can check back later and review. And we'll also provide some post-event feedback, partly in terms of that recording, but also any other slides that we give and other associated documents. So we'll just start with an introduction and context. Then Mark will basically spend some time going through the case study at Amersham and how that came about and the experience to date. Then we want to have some discussion. Now, I've got some breakout groups potentially. We've probably got enough people to have at least two groups, but the idea is we've got some questions we want people to address following Mark's presentation. And then we can have some feedback and discussion after that, addressing the questions we've posed. And at the end, obviously, we've got time, we can further questions. So that's the plan. Also, we want to get some summary and follow-on actions, because hopefully there'll be some other things that we can follow after this. So that's the plan for this for the next hour or so. Bit of context, which I'll start off. Some of you know Mark, but I first came across Mark when he was at Middlesex University as part of their continuous improvement team there, and Middlesex is still an accredited organisation, so that's really where his knowledge and experience and use of the LCS came. But Mark was, in fact, as I'm sure he'll explain to you, was a teacher originally, and then he returned to teaching a few years ago as a teacher of science at Amersham School. The next part of the story is around 2020-ish, I think it was. He had the idea of maybe we could apply the LCS in the school environment. I think I remember he got in touch with me and we discussed that. Obviously, we never thought about this from an LCS point of view. It's very much about workplace in organisations and companies and so forth. But I thought, yeah, this is certainly worth looking at. So I said, let's do an experiment. Let's use Amersham as a pilot to do this. Then, of course, we hit lockdown. So what was going to be a smooth implementation suddenly was interrupted by what turned about, obviously, the 2-year period, and obviously schools were in the thick of it, and there wasn't a real opportunity to progress it. But then, as things settled down, and sometime last year around the spring, we got back in touch, and then sort of reignited the process. Which was finally completed in autumn last year. So that's the context. Mark will give a bit more detail of that shortly. So it's taken a bit longer perhaps than we would have originally envisaged, but obviously with the pandemic and everything, these things are bound to get in the way. And there we are back in with the head teacher and two of the pupils on their certificate back in sometime in September-ish last year, in front of their splendid brick wall, hence my inspired quote for those who are old enough to remember Pink Floyd. Right, so that's all I'm going to say in terms of introduction. I'm going to hand over to Mark now, who should have control of the slide, and then he's going to take you through the Amersham case study.
Simon, thank you for that. That's wonderful. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I know you're all going to be very busy people, so it's really nice for me to know that you've taken time out of your day to come and find out a little bit more about what's going on at Amersham, and that you're interested to do so. A little bit of background, I suppose, with me first. As Simon says, I've kind of been in and out of teaching. So most of my working life has been in project management in one way or another, and a number of years ago I used to play football quite a lot, and when I got to my mid-30s I started to pick up injuries, and those injuries started to last for quite a long time, and so I stopped playing football quite so much on the weekends, and I started football coaching instead, and that was the kind of thing that first got me into teaching. So I did football coaching for about 6-7 years, really enjoyed it, loved working with the kids, and basically just feeding off their enthusiasm. So I started thinking about teaching as a career, and in 2014 I finally took the leap. The reason for coming back out of teaching and ended up at Middlesex was that my wife and I were trying to move. And on the teaching salary that I had at the time, I just couldn't afford to move and upscale to the house that we're in now, so we could start a family, etc. But what that did give me is it gave me the opportunity to engage basically with CI and Lean, and as a result, that's now something that I've been able to take back into teaching. So maybe it was a good thing and a positive opportunity as a result. In my current role, I'm a teacher of science, but I also have responsibility across the whole school for something we call circle skills. And you'll be forgiven if you have no idea what that is, but essentially skills for working life. So circle stands for communication, interpersonal, research, creativity, leadership, and then effective self-management. And so what my role is to try and find as many ways as we possibly can alongside and within the curriculum to provide our students with opportunities to learn about what these skills really are, and then practice and embed them, so that when they leave our sixth form, they can sell themselves either on UCAS statements or in any particular interview scenarios they might end up in. So that kind of, again, works quite nicely with the LCS piece, in that it's just another opportunity for them to practice and learn these skills. So I'll take you on with the slide now and introduce you to, I'll take you on. There we go. Right there. So the business enhancement team at Middlesex, I owe these guys a huge amount of thanks in lots and lots of different ways. It gave me an awful lot of opportunities. So I'm just going to thank Natasha Bennett first and foremost. Natasha is now the head of change over at City University, but at the time she was working for, for some reason just skipped on. At the time she was at Middlesex University, and she was the manager of the business enhancement team. She subsequently left and did a lot of work with the guys in the pictures here. So on the left hand side, you'll see us in front of our ComCell or stand up that we used to do every morning, and I'm sure if you're interested in Lean or CI in any way, you'll have seen and engaged in those. You can see just a little bit of our visual management as well on the left hand side, but we've got Mila there, myself, Kelly, Kim, and then we have on the other slide we've got the big guy at the back, John. Okay, and we've also got Nicole, who's sitting there in the middle of those as well. They were a lot of fun to work with. We had a great amount of laughs together, but we had an amazing opportunity. We went on the right hand side, you can see that slide, we went to Tromsø and we did an Erasmus exchange with the university out there, and we shared lots and lots of experience on Lean and CI and how to get it going, because the purpose of business enhancement was basically to engender a culture of continuous improvement within the university, and you won't be surprised to hear that as part of doing that we hit a number of brick walls, and we went out to Tromsø. They gave us a lot of ideas, and they've been doing it for longer, and just ways in which we could engage our organisation with it and take some of the fear away. They gave us a brilliant game to use to introduce CI, and I shamelessly steal that as part of my training now. It was building a Lego house. Yeah, a lovely little competition, but so many different layers of CI that you could put into it, and they set it up so beautifully that we stole it for our training, and I still use it now. I had an opportunity with that team to go to the Lean HE conference as well and do some presentation there. But the most important part of that experience for me was we was part of a 4-man team who gained the LCS accreditation when we were at Middlesex, and so I had the opportunity there to spend about 2 years of delivering that within the university and helping people get signed off to a level 1B. It was also there that I developed a love for these things. And I think if you're in CI in any way, shape or form, it's impossible pretty much to go through your life without Post-it notes. So for 2 years, I carried a little box around with Post-it notes and Sharpies and did SciPocs and Racy Matrix and Skills Matrix and Voice of the Customer and all the things that you will know and be aware of. And now, obviously, transferring that that love of Post-it notes to the kids, and actually, yeah, they get it. They quite enjoy it, and that's great to see. So this then brings me on to where I am now, and so back at Amersham. Amersham is a non-selective school in a selective area. So what that basically means is we are surrounded by grammar schools, and we have a horrible situation for a lot of kids. They do something called the 11+. Yeah, and at that stage in their life, they're basically told, you're successful, you can go to grammar school. You're not successful, you have to go to these other schools that are available to you. And we are one of those schools. So a lot of the pupils that arrive at Amersham, they already feel like they've failed in some way, shape or form. So one of the biggest challenges for us as a school is to build them back up. They then get to year 11 and they get their GCSEs, and we have a huge attrition rate again at that point with students who are again wanting to go to grammar schools because they see that the grammar schools provide perhaps a better springboard for them in terms of their future opportunities. So our big strategic aim at Amersham at the moment is to try and build our sixth form, to try and give these students opportunities that they wouldn't necessarily have elsewhere. And also to increase our retention. So we lose a lot of children, as I said, externally. So we want to hold on to more, and we want to start to recruit externally as well. And actually this year, for the first ever time, we're starting to get some people come the other way from grammar schools. So what we've been doing over the last 2 or 3 years seems to have worked. Or be working. And the LCS accreditation sits really firmly in this. So what I'm trying to do is to give an opportunity for these students to have or to gain a certification that they would not be able to gain elsewhere. And then that goes onto their CV. They can talk about it and they can sell themselves off the back of it. And maybe just provide that little bit of differentiation when they're trying to compete against others for UCAS places or work, or as it's becoming increasingly popular, apprenticeships as well. Okay, so coming back to what I said before, they are amazing kids, but they do lack confidence, and so very much anything that we can do to help build that is a bonus. And to see the confidence and the belief that some of the pupils have got who've been accredited so far, and that positivity that they get, it has been fantastic. So the training itself, as I said before, the reason that we're doing it is for a number of benefits. So I'm not going to talk through all these. I'll just leave these up on the screen for a moment for you guys to take a look at. But there's some obvious big benefits there for both us as a school and the pupils as well. One of the big positives, I suppose, about LCS, again, we are a business and enterprise specialist academy school, and so this really sits nicely with that specialism. Okay, and it's a lovely alignment and a big tick in the box for us strategically there. So the way that we provide the training, essentially, as I'm sure you're all aware, is all about problem solving. The training is very much aligned to the Deming cycle, PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act, and most of it will focus on the planning part. So I'll show you a little bit of work that we've been doing with some of the pupils in a short period of time, but essentially focusing really in the main on analysing and understanding the current state, and then that key skill of root cause analysis as well. The training does then go on and talk about potential solutions, implementation, standardizing the processes, etc. But for the purposes of the accreditation, they don't actually need to implement the project. They just need to have planned and decided how they're going to implement and what they might measure as a result. Okay, so I need to thank Kelly and the guys at Business Enhancement Team again, because they allowed me to take the training content that we had at Middlesex away and to repurpose it, and that helped save me a huge amount of time. So the level that we are looking for our students to attain is level 1B. And there's a little bit of information on the slide in front of you. At this point, I just want to take a moment to say thank you to Simon. He alluded to it at the start, but he's been incredibly patient with me and with us through this process. I had hoped to get us to this point far quicker, but the reality of teaching very much meant that during term time, there wasn't a lot of time to be able to take a step back and really engage with this. So Simon gets pestered every time I have a half-term break or Easter or summer, and slowly we've moved it forward until, as you saw, at the end of Easter break last year, we finally managed to get the accreditation signed off. So as I said, thank you again to him for his help, support and patience through that time. The students obtain the first level, so level 1A, through a multiple choice quiz after a period of training. We've had 2 cohorts so far. The first was 5 students. Of those 5, 3 were successful in attaining level 1A. So a little bit of disappointment that 2 missed out, but also at the same time, it's kind of affirmed that there is a little bit of challenge in them obtaining it, which is actually quite a nice thing as well. And I think it meant that those who did succeed, again, it just helped to boost their confidence and for them to understand that actually there's some value in this. Not everyone is able to achieve it. That said, fingers crossed this time around, I've changed the training just a little bit, and hopefully a little bit more practice in terms of the questions that they might need to answer to be successful. So this time around, we've got 3 in our cohort. It's very small, smaller than I'd anticipated it being, and I'm going to explain the reasons why in a little bit, because I would very much appreciate your help and support in terms of brainstorming how we might be able to overcome some of the challenges that have meant that the cohort is rather small. So the projects that we are I meant to change the order of this slide, but I'll stop at this point and just introduce you so obviously we've got Simon on the left. Sharon next to Simon is our head teacher, and she's been wonderfully supportive in all of this, and continues to be going forward. I think she was as happy and excited as anyone to get that certificate in her hand, and she's very much enjoyed driving the publicity that's gone with it. It's been quite nice for us locally. The local Chamber of Commerce in particular really picked up on it. and we had a lot of contact with them and a lot of support with them going forward in terms of giving our students interview skills. So lots of these local businesses are going to be supporting our students in terms of giving them a real experience of interviews. So that's one of the big positives that's come out of the publicity around this. Next to that, you have 2 of our 3 from the first cohort. So we have Cyrus and Orlando, and they are both successful in achieving their first choices at university. They've both gone to Russell Group universities, which for them and for our students is quite aspirational. So we're, fingers crossed, we're hoping that the fact that they had this on the CV helped just a little bit to get their foot through the door. But yeah, delighted with them. Very professional young men who I'm sure Simon can attest to. They present themselves very well, and they really they sell our school in a way that we you know, you couldn't do any better. So we are currently working on an alumni project. So there's 3 students that are going through this year. If you look on the right hand side, we manage everything through Microsoft Teams with them, set lots of little assignments. They've got a little folder each where they keep their progress, or they as we go through all the tools, they complete them and then they put them in there. So when they come to writing the project up at the end for their accreditation, everything's in there. They've got it tracked nice and easily. They've got my feedback in there as well, and then hopefully it means that when they get to doing their final report, all the information that they need is there and it's easy for them to access. So I'll leave the problem statement up there and you can have a little read through that if you want to. But we're looking at an alumni project this year. So again, all of this is trying to tie in with improving our sixth form. We have a real challenge at the moment in terms of engaging with alumni and trying to get them to come back in and essentially to inspire the next generation of Amersham sixth form students. And so it just seemed quite nice, an opportunity for this LCS project to work in terms of improving our engagement with our alumni and making sure that we use them far better. I've got my own ideas about where this project goes, but it's quite nice actually to let the students have their say and have their ideas, because as always they come up with ones that you would never have. So you can see also in that bottom right hand corner, we've just we've done our problem statement, we've done a SIPOC for this, we've done our first bits of voice of the customer, we've been interviewing people, we've created some questionnaires that we're going to be sending out soon to ex-students. And we've started the process map. So the process map that's in the bottom right hand corner is actually from one of the tasks that the students did, and it's Amazon deliveries rather than the alumni project piece. But we haven't finished the alumni project piece, so I stuck that in there just to make the slide ever so slightly more interesting. But essentially we have 3 students who are really keen, really committed. What's really fantastic as well is they've actually got, so Jasmine works for Coat. Eddie and Josh don't have jobs outside, but there is very few areas, I suppose, that you could work in where you'd see more continuous improvement and more efficiency and Kaizen and all the rest than in a really high functioning restaurant. So that's been really, really useful in terms of embedding the ideas for the students. So she's constantly coming up with ways and ideas that they implement this at Coat, and that's been really, really helpful for Eddie and Josh as well. Just to try and summarize everything really, and the key learning points and why we need your help today. The first and the biggest learning point that I've got is this. So this essentially explains why our cohorts are so small, the students really struggle to explicitly understand what's in it for them. So I've put LCS versus EPQ. You all know what LCS is. EPQ is what we call, well, what is called an extended project qualification. And it is an incredibly well-known qualification for students who are progressing through the UCAS route. And if you've had any involvement in the recruitment side at universities, I'm sure you'll know what it is, but it's essentially it's a long project qualification which is designed to take students' skills in terms of research and academic writing and really stretch them. The challenge that I've got is because it's very well known and because it's very well understood, and also it gives credit. So universities essentially treat it like another A-level when it comes to making offers and accepting people. So I gave a presentation and had loads of students who were really, really interested and really intrigued about the opportunity for LCS. So 20 plus who came along. And then a week and a half later, one of my colleagues, Stella, who runs the EPQ program, she gave a presentation on EPQ. And of those 20 people, we ended up hemorrhaging loads of students to the EPQ because they didn't quite understand what LCS was going to provide for them, because it was new. And there was no evidence that it was going to be necessarily impactful for them in the future. Whereas EPQ, there's a lot of history with this. There's lots of students who've done it before, and they really understood what was in it for them. So that's the number one point, is how do we as a school overcome that challenge? Second one was to do with practical experience to relate to the learning material. So if it wasn't for Jasmine and her experience in COAT, we would really struggle with some of the students for them to be able to understand some of the examples that we were looking at originally within the training at Middlesex. So a lot of the case studies need to be focused on real world examples that the pupils can relate to. So we've been talking about things like getting a haircut, going to restaurants, doctor's appointments, things that everyone has done, in order that they can really pin it to their experiences so far. Timelines need to be really flexible. So we've got year 12 and year 13 students. They've got coursework deadlines, they've got exams that are coming, and it's a constant challenge to try and engage around that. So we try and do it. When I was doing it at Middlesex University, we would take people out for an entire day. They would spend an entire day with us. We would go through things. It would be comfortable. We would have lunch. And it wasn't a rushed experience. The only time that we have collectively that we can get together a week is for an hour on a Thursday after school. And so that hour becomes very, very precious. And at times, as we work through the year, we'll lose people to coursework deadlines, or we'll lose people to exam prep. So that's been a real challenge. And then finally, the last bit is just because it is just me, I'm a real single point of failure. And if I'm not there, if I'm ill, if I have to go and pick my little one up from nursery, then everything falls down for that week. So they are the key learning points so far, and they give rise to these key challenges, which I'm hoping I might get some inspiration from you guys to help me resolve. So the first one is how to sell the course more effectively. So the what's in it for me piece. How do we ensure that the pupils understand that what they will get at the end is tangible? At the moment, the big challenge is it's not really, this is something that's not going to be on anyone's CV for university. And so a lot of them are sitting there thinking, well, if universities don't know what it is and what it's about, why do I spend my extra time now on LCS rather than EPQs or other things that I can really tangibly see will help me to get my foot in the door? Okay, so that's challenge number one. Challenge number two is keeping the training up to date. So I'm already 3 years behind the curve in terms of CI. So everything that is in there is stuff that I remember that I was doing 3 years ago. And as is inevitable, there is always progression. Yeah, there's always new learning. And at the moment, I have very, very, very little time to be able to look at what's happening in that wider world and to keep up to date with it. So inevitably our training is going to fall behind if that situation remains. The other one is I'm able to provide experience within a school setting, but there's very limited opportunities really for the pupils to explore processes in there. So I've got a list of about 5 that we can look to review, but very, very shortly after that, I think they are going to dry up and we'll have less and less that we can actually look at. So providing real world experience outside of that school setting, I think is incredibly important. I think it also potentially is an answer to number 1 as well. So the more real world experience that we might be able to provide, the more tangible that is, the easier the sell it is. So guys, if you do this course, we can take you to visit XYZ place, okay, and they will show you how this works. Yeah, and they will give you that opportunity to maybe practice and embed some of your skills in the real world. And then the last one is providing another perspective. It comes back to that single point of failure in some ways, but more importantly as well, I am the only voice that those students hear from. Yeah, and sometimes I get bored of my own voice doing it, so I dread to think how they feel after they've had 14 weeks of me. And so to provide a different perspective, to hear from someone else in a different environment, who potentially an environment that they might be thinking about going down, that I think will be really useful and valuable in terms of engagement for them, but also learning. Yeah, and again, I think it's another thing that helps potentially to sell the course more effectively. You know, if these students are going to be able to learn even in a half-hour slot from someone else who is doing this day to day on how, why, yeah, the impact, yeah, and what they get out of the job, what they have learned, yeah, that impact piece. Look, this is a project I've worked on. This is what we delivered. Yeah, this is what success looks like in this particular area. I think that would be hugely beneficial for them. So that's really it from me. Hopefully that's given you an idea of where we're going, what we're doing, and most importantly, as I said, those key challenges. And what I'm really hopeful for today is that with the collective brain power that we have, that we might be able to come up with some ideas or opportunities that might help the students just to learn a little bit more, and also to build their confidence in the fact that this is something that they really, really, really should do, and it will benefit them. Yeah, and there will be a payoff further down the line. Okay. So yeah, that's it from me this morning. Thank you.
Right, unmuted. Okay. Thanks a lot, Mark. That was great. Hopefully people get a full picture of what's happened and to say some of these challenges. We will perhaps pause and just ask if anyone's got any questions in a minute. What we then plan to do is I've got some questions. I've set up 3 groups. Whether we need 3 rooms or not, there's about 15 of us here, I think. And essentially, those sort of challenges have been put into these questions, and I've assigned different questions to different rooms apart from there's a repeat of number 2 there. But and this is really linked to those challenges. How might organisations support pupils in workplace readiness and real experience? How can industry practice support the different programme? How can students applying for university be convinced that gaining the LCS qualification, those real value, that point that Mark made against the EPQ? how can we spread this to other secondary schools? I mean, this is a pilot, we're learning from it, but I think there's an opportunity for other schools to get involved. Again, that the same one, how could industry practice support the growth? So the aim is we'll break out the groups, which will allow 20 minutes for discussion, then we'll come back and each group can report back on what they've come up with. These will disappear, I've realised, so I'll see if I can put them in the chat or something so you can refer. I'm not sure how we can get back to them, but maybe we can copy them and put them in the chat. Might be the way to you to check them out. But if take a mental note of some of those anyway. But before we go into that, we thought, are there any initial questions people want to ask Mark, given that he's just what he's just said? So feel free to put your hand up or unmute and introduce yourself and ask a question to Mark. So anyone got any questions, basically?
Yeah, could I just ask one, Simon? Of Mark?
Yeah, Leighton, yeah.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mark. Thanks for the introduction. I'm not sure whether I can miss it. Could you give me a feel for the types of issues that the two cohorts worked on, in terms of the analysis and problem description part?
Okay, so the first cohort hasn't actually worked on any projects as part of that first cohort. We just did the level 1A, and it was the knowledge assessment, if you like. So the second cohort, what I've done this time around is I've gone to other areas of the school in that time and tried to find out issues or problems or challenges. So we have at the moment, petty cash and handling of petty cash in the school is a little bit of a challenge. So that's one of the processes that we can look to work on. But what I've chosen at the moment of the numbers that I've got was just the alumni project. So all they've done with me so far this year is work on this alumni project. So we've looked at what our problem statement is. We've created our goal statement. They have completed a SIPOC with the key sponsor within the school who's looking after that particular piece of work. We've done some process mapping on that, and we've created questionnaires for the students, our ex-students, to obtain some voice of the customer, and that's as far as we've got. At this point. Of the Cyrus and Orlando who were in the photo, who went through the first cohort, they have joined us sporadically going forward whenever we are working on the project. So I do a little bit of training with the second cohort, and then I'll do training, project work, training, project work. So train on a tool and then actually practice that tool. Train on a tool, practice tool, etc. is kind of the way it's been going so far.
Okay, thank you. Cheers.
That's okay.
Okay, no.
Jason has got his hand up.
Oh, Jason, sorry, yeah.
Good morning, Mark. Can you hear me okay?
I can, Jason, yeah.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for the presentation. Really interesting. Just a couple of questions for you. So firstly, can you just confirm if your LCS 1A knowledge check is open book or closed book?
So it is part closed, part open. Yeah. So we have a 20 minutes, which is closed book, and the last 10 minutes is open book. That's the way it works.
Thank you for that. And then the second one is, has consideration been given by the college to work on a pull rather than a push process for identification of projects? So ultimately the school knows that it has problem X. They then look to use your students on the course to actually try to deliver improvement based on that requirement rather than trying to find projects to deliver.
I think ideally that's where we'd like to go to, Jason, but the problem at the moment is it's for me to build confidence in the process, that this works and that we should allow exposure of what are essentially going to be business areas to pupils.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge that I have to overcome, and I need to convince our senior leadership team at the moment that that is something that would be worth doing.
Yeah.
So ideally, yes, but let's just say that the organisational culture is not quite where it needs to be at the moment for that to happen.
We all get that.
So hopeful that if we can deliver some impact at the end of this year on this one, then we'll have people coming to us going, oh, can you help us with this?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that.
That's okay.
We've got a few questions in the chat room, Simon. Do you want to address those now, or should we?
Let's do this at the end, so because we're going to run out of time if we're not careful. Okay, let's try and do a few this breakout work. What I've got 2 rooms. I said 3, but I think there's enough for 2. I've added these questions into the chat, so hopefully you can still access them whilst you're in the room. And essentially, I mean, as just as long as you cover, 1 or 2, and then we can have some feedback later. I think the key ones about the issue that Mark raised, the BQ one, and I think how could industry support those probably the ones to focus on. I'm going to press a button on my screen called Opal Rooms. I've forgotten exactly what happened when I do this. Out of the rooms, and at this point, we want to just get some feedback from what was discussed. So if we start with breakout room 1, I'm not sure if you know which room you're in, but that was. Do we have someone who can speak for room 1?
I'm happy to do that, Simon.
Jason, yeah, great. Okay, well, if you would like to just speak away, yeah.
Yeah, no problem. So we looked at questions 1 and 2 in breakout room 1 predominantly, but what I'll do is just provide an overview of some of the points from the more wider discussion as well. So, and anyone else, please feel free to jump in to add any further detail. So one of the things we spoke about in terms of the training was to essentially develop an island of excellence within the college. So this might be, for example, working with, let's just say, the team in the kitchen or the catering services, whatever that looks like, and using lean methodology, setting that area up so that it can always be used as a reference. You've got those examples to put into the training as well into the material. So that might be something that is useful as an idea. We spoke about the actual delivery of projects and how they could benefit the local community. So I think it alludes to a point that was mentioned earlier in the chat, in that it's having a blend of examples where the methodology has been used in the school or in schools more broadly across the industry, but also to the wider community, which then obviously offers mutual benefit in terms of the school enhancing its reputation, and then the benefit to, for example, the local council through delivery of a project that they require support with. In terms of how can industry practitioners help, we spoke about partnerships, we spoke about sponsorship, we spoke about some organizations providing work experience, we spoke about mentoring, we spoke about coaching. So there's obviously quite a lot to that, but it seemed in our room that there was enthusiasm to be able to help learners, even if it ranged from coming and giving a short presentation, right through to actually mentoring and coaching a cohort or an individual. I think one of the more major points that might be useful is we spoke about LCS versus EPQ, and I think what we thought might be useful is if the skills that are developed through delivering a project using LCS as an enabler to do that. We spoke about LCS actually being supplementary to EPQ rather than being versus EPQ. So if you think about, EPQ is what they're intending to do, but LCS is the approach that is used to gain your EPQ. So essentially what you can look to have at the college is a standardized way in which EPQ can be achieved. So it might be that you use PDSA, PDCA, DMAIC, whatever it is that you want to use as an approach for the college. But actually the aim is to achieve your EPQ using lean knowledge, skills and mindset that is, developed through LCS as the enabler. I think that's, and we also spoke about learners needing like a tangible hook. So essentially, them being able to deliver projects that are meaningful to them, so that then they will dedicate the time. So it's not about what you're going to get; it's about the experience that you actually have by working in an area that's meaningful to you. So let's just say, for example, the environment, and looking to make an improvement in the environment in the local community. Clearly, people may well be more infused if that's something that interests them. I think that's a bit of waffle, but please, anyone add or provide any feedback.
Yeah. Great, thanks, Jason. Just before we move on, any from that room want to add anything or expand on what Jason said?
Just to kind of expand a little bit on what Jason said, Mark, you kind of mentioned how there was some kind of wariness or reticence around letting the students at kind of school processes. And so that's why we talked around kind of the things like the canteen, or those processes that they're the customer of, that don't go anywhere near customer data or sensitive data. So, you could do something where you go to Gemba canteen with your students. You can do that kind of Gemba thing there, but it's a completely non-sensitive place, but you might get some really good ideas as to how you can build a project for each of them. That was it.
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea, actually. I've just scribbled, obviously, notes on what you've just been saying down. And Daniel, who runs the kitchen, is just the kind of person I think who would be really open for that as well. And we have a lot of student volunteers who work in the cafe area. And so one of the big challenges in the school is how do you get 700 kids in through the cafe and out efficiently every day. So yeah, it's perfect opportunity. So yeah, I will definitely be taking that one forward. The LCS versus EPQ thing as well. It's amazing how if you don't have the time to lift your head away from things for a moment, you can miss little things like that. But we're just talking about that with Simon and John while you guys were in the breakout, because obviously someone had already mentioned it in the meeting chat, and I've already sent an email to Stella, who runs EPQs, to say how can we make this work. So yeah, again, thank you.
Okay, great. All right, well, let's move on to room 2. Where we got a spokesperson for room 2. Is room 2 here? Anyone from room 2 here? It's not stuck in the ether, are they?
I could say a few words, Simon.
Go on then, Neil. You chip in.
So we spent most of the time introducing ourselves, to be honest. But anyway, we had a good discussion again about the LCS versus kind of the EPQ, or not, as the case may be. And I think kind of where we got to was to say, well, EPQ's there to stay. It's kind of the standard currency for supporting people to get into university. But there's a segment there for an example of a project, could be an LCS project that would help. I think EPQ, I don't really know much about it, apart from the fact my daughter refused to do it. It is, quite an umbrella, and quite a broad umbrella. And I think, carving a piece out for LCS probably is the best way to go. And it might be, for some, and this is my view, so not necessarily the group's view, it might be for some courses, more engineering, manufacturing based, it's more relevant than others in that respect. But then that doesn't negate the fact that sometimes you kind of look at university as being more of a holistic education rather than for a specific, vacation in the end. So that's kind of what I took from it. Any other kind of views from the group?
Yeah, just to build on what you said there, I think it was Leighton that said about that sort of what's the value to the customer, and that helped kind of bring it back. And is there sort of cohorts of your pupils that are sort of aspiring for university and would therefore naturally see the EPQ as more value to them, and then those that aren't or aren't as kind of convinced on the university route, and sort of bringing out this kind of career as this sort of option as a career, project management, continuous improvement, lean, as being sold to them at that point. I mean, I just kind of gave the example of when I was at school and university, a career and project management wasn't ever kind of shared with me, or like that wasn't ever a career area that was ever kind of sold to me, really. So is there something in that kind of how can you take this forward in your career, rather than kind of focusing on what's the value to me in a university route, and driving that a little bit more, because I'd love to have known about all this stuff when I was at school.
Interesting you say that, Rachel, because I'm thinking about all of the conversations that we might have with our students, and I don't think project management really has come up, not through our careers route anyway. So yeah, it's definitely something to add into that mix.
Yeah. I was just going to add to that, from our organisation's point of view, I put it in the chat that we belong to a lean forum in our county, but also we offer various work placements for sixth formers. So we do 2-week programmes, and they're on a various opportunities. So we have engineering opportunities, robotics, but we also do it in business. One pupil comes and joins us in our central business improvement team for 2 weeks. So when our group 2 was talking about the fact that there's 2 kind of different value streams, those that might want to use it as part of an EPQ project for maybe a university route, and as Rachel said there, those that are thinking about going direct into some sort of job after sixth form, and there's a plethora now of apprenticeships and programs that they can go into, whether they're degree apprenticeships or not degree apprenticeships, and these can give people, those sixth formers, an insight into working in that organisation and what's lean is and stuff. So if you've got a kind of forum in your area of those industries that are already maybe working and sharing together already, then you've got a platform for people in those industries who come and help you, give presentations, provide projects, site visits. So, so up here in Cumbria, we have people like Pirelli Tyres, McVitie's making the biscuits that are gorgeous, ourselves, people who build playgrounds. So we have a really variety of large and small companies that all the lean people are working together to share practice. And I just wondered if there's something in your area.
Yeah, thanks for that, Karen. I've done a quick search actually. I'm obviously going through the chat while you guys were in the breakout room, and I wasn't able to find anything immediately, but we've got contacts in our local Chamber of Commerce, etc. So I'm going to ask through them and see what I can find there. You've given me another idea as well, because we've also got a little bit of a connection with a company who sell something called SolidWorks, which is 3D CAD or modeling software, and they've got some incredible companies in the local area who use that for design, and so I'm pretty sure we might be able to get our education consultant to have a conversation with some of the consultants who look after those larger companies, and maybe see if we can get a route in that way. You know, they would be like the Pirellis of this world, but I think some of them are in Formula 1 and stuff like that as well, which would be incredibly interesting. So yeah, thank you.
Michael, you raised your hand?
Yeah, so something that occurred to me just as while we were talking, I mean, I'm in a university currently, and one of the things that's got an increasing currency is around the UN sustainability goals. We're in the process of making sure that every single course or program has some element of sustainability in it. So depending on what the program is, we tailor sustainability towards that. And there's lots of things in the local community that are around sustainability and whatnot. So as a university, we're really interested in students' interest or kind of knowledge of the sustainability development goals. And one of the things that we're trying to do is kind of put responsible citizens out there once they've graduated from where we are. So I don't know whether that's more EPQ or LCS plus EPQ, but that's just an idea to share for you.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. We've also got like a school council, and there is an environmental group within that. So that's something that maybe the two could work on as well. But yeah, if you were able to, Michael, share some more ideas about how you're doing it at Southampton, just to spark a few ideas, if you're happy to, that would be very gratefully received.
Yeah, sure. I'll try and get your email later.
So I'm going to say, Tracy, you've got your hand up.
Hi. Yeah, that was really a great presentation. Thanks for that, and generated a lot of discussion. I think I'm going to pick up on Rachel's point as well in terms of kind of reach out. So I think it's sort of like civil service. There is many careers in the civil service that involve lean and continuous improvement, and there are many job roles. Ranging from like transition managers to change managers, change agents, lean agents. There's a whole host of them, and in the civil service we offer volunteering sort of like so many days per year. And if you reach out, I'm sure there are people, myself included, who would be more than willing to come in and talk to the students and offer sort of like what the career path that they've chosen and how it's helped them in their career path. I didn't choose to come into this career. I chose a totally different route. It's just, it was an opportunity presented to me. Now, there's also that, I just say reach out.
Great, thanks. Jordan, just hand it first.
Yeah, just on Rachel's point and the point just made then, I was very similar in that in college I realised I hated it, and then I did an apprenticeship still trying to figure out where I was going to go. And at 19, I jumped into continuous improvement with very little background experience other than just an interest in it. And I think CI is particularly something that you don't need a huge amount of qualifications, or there aren't a lot of barriers to entry. So I think having something like a B2C qualification, showing interest in it, a little bit of business experience and passion for it, and it'd be quite easy to carve out a career in CI. But I don't think those are the sort of things that at that level that you can do at college. You just have this big mystery cloud.
Yeah, I would tend to agree, Jordan. I think it is a bit of a mystery beforehand. And like you say, there's opportunities to go in so many different routes. I mean, CI seems to be everywhere at the moment. One of the things I did when I presented to the students about the initial opportunity was I just Googled continuous improvement on a job site. And you wouldn't believe the number of opportunities that come back, just within our local area. I think it was over 10,000. So yeah, the opportunities are there, and I think you're right as well about the barriers to entry. I managed to get into it myself in Middlesex without any experience. So yeah, I think that is a fair point. Tracy, sorry, I didn't get to acknowledge your comment as well. But yeah, thank you. If you would be happy to come and do any sort of presentation, we would bite your hand off at the school in terms of opportunities. Civil services is something that our students have not been made aware of. I think a lot of the presentations are fairly standard, in business, law, medicine, etc. And I think there's an awful lot of other opportunities around those key areas that we could add to. And if you'd be happy to do it, even virtually, we do a lot of stuff virtually now. If that helps not to travel, then that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks for that. A few more. Jason put his hand up just now.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just thinking while we're talking and looking at the questions. I just was looking at that question about how can it be spread to other secondary schools. I think there's a real opportunity here for your college to be that island of excellence that can share the story of your journey about how you've gone through this, change. And I think if somehow it could be cracked that through LCS you've developed a standardized way to deliver the EPQ, I think that's going to be massive in selling it to other secondary schools and other areas that would really benefit from this. I think, you know, clearly there's a lot of support on this call for what you're trying to do, and I'd like to reach out as well. And, you know, I'm more than happy to share my experience from the military and from the NHS thus far to help your learners.
Great, thanks for that. That question, I'm particularly interested in the spread of this potentially, and
I thought you might be.
Yeah, well, we also have to develop a commercial model for this because it's still under pilot mode and everything. But potentially, there's philosophical benefits as well as practical ones. I'm all in favour of this, but that's something for future discussion. Neil, did you want to ask a question?
Well, just pick up on a point from a few moments ago, and sorry, it took me a while to find the hand to raise, really. But anyway, that's my technical competence. Just with going back to the energy conversation we had, you know, one of the things I did was run sort of part of my kind of lean and green stuff with, you know, with the guys that, or with the, you know, with the students from, you know, Reading. And it's just taken a small area to look at what the inputs and the outputs are from an environmental perspective. You know, and I use the McDonald's example as, you know, a real life one that, you know, they could use. And then, you know, their kind of homework, so to speak, is to pick a room in the college and work out, you know, what it uses and what it loses, essentially, just to get them on the way. And that was supporting one of their kind of assignments in their BTEC, which, you know, kind of demonstrates their, you know, skills in that area, I guess, which is, you know, quite a simple thing to do, really, in that respect.
Thanks for that. Okay, we've got 5 minutes of allotted time, so probably one time for one more comment or question. Anyone got any further things?
You're on mute. You're on mute. He's got his hand up. Leighton.
Leighton.
You're on mute.
Your skills are either improving or going backwards at the same time, Leighton. If you've got both, can you unmute yourself? He probably left the group now, is he?
No, I am. I'm still here. You're right.
Well,
just a quick one. Yeah, if you've got any free technology courses, Mark, yeah, then yeah, we'll get on to it. So just something Mark said earlier on about getting his senior leadership team on, you know, on board. Probably paraphrased that. I shared an example in the group about just running, you know, the simulation with a group of teachers, and they came up with about 15 ideas where it could be applied within the school. And I hasten to add, even in this enlightened day and age, you still have to take senior leadership teams in industry through that type of exercise because they don't know what they don't know. So just maybe an idea there. I'm not sure the practicalities, but as with, there's a lot of experience on this call, quite happy to share some thoughts on it. Yeah. Yeah, just that's the point.
Right. I know that's a very good point. I think you're right. There's always room to get leadership on board, and we know from all of the lead experience, if you don't get leaders on board, then things never stick. Okay. Well, I think we're coming out of time, and always want to keep these things to time. So I think in terms of, obviously, this is the first of these things we've done. The whole thing's a bit of an experiment. I'm quite keen to keep it going. Keep learning from the Amersham experience, spread the network, see how we can improve that, help them sustain it, and then potentially spread the idea to other schools. Because for me, this is more of a it's at a philosophical level. This is getting scientific thinking, process thinking, problem solving into the minds of pupils at schools, which I think is a key core skill in society today for all sorts of reasons, not least helping them get a job. So there's a bit of a mission in this, I think, that's worth following up. So we're going to start thinking how we can do that, take some feedback from events like this. We might run follow-up events, but also we shall be in touch with you with partly to communicate the outputs, whether it's the video or slides and so forth, but also to follow up on some of the offers of assistance. I'm sure Mark will happily gobble up. I'm going to stop there. Mark, do you want to say anything in
Oh yes, please. Yeah. Like I said at the start, ladies and gents, I know just how busy everyone is, and how valuable 90 minutes of everyone's time is. So huge thank you for coming along today, engaging, listening, and giving me the benefit of those ideas. There's a huge amount for me to take away already from here. Some no-brainers, which I'm sitting here kicking myself for not coming up with myself. But if anyone is willing or able to help out in any way, or is also one of the things I would really love to do is to be able to get some of the students to visit some places, yeah, and to see it in action, even if it's just for half a day. We will be going to Middlesex, 100%. But if anyone thinks they might be in a situation to provide a similar opportunity, that would be wonderful. I've put my email address in there. I'm sure if you go onto LinkedIn, you'll find me pretty easily as well. So please do feel free to get in touch. And those of you who've already offered, I will be following up very shortly and biting hands off. So yeah, thank you very much, guys.
Great.
Great. Well, thanks for your contribution today, Mark, and thanks for everyone to turn up. So have a good rest of the day, and we'll be in touch with some follow-up stuff for this. So thanks a lot then. Bye.